What's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thanks for coming back to Get Hit with the Truth. So today we are doing the rankings for the interactive fantasy heavyweight boxing tournament that I'm doing to determine the best champion from the year 2000 all the way to 2024. Basically the best heavyweight of this millennium thus far. This video is going to be on my number 9 heavyweight going into the tournament, and that is former WBO champion Lamon Brewster of the United States. Relentless Lamon Brewster. Now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So Lamon Brewster is a, well, before, again, guys, these rankings are based on a point system that I came up with, based on wins, who you beat, how you beat them, and overall titles. Lamon Brewster was a one-time champion. He captured the WBO title in, I believe it was 2004. Yes, 2004, and he held it into, for 2 years, basically. But it was a good run. He had 6 fights, 6 title fights in total, with an overall record of, in the title fights, an overall record of 4-2. But prior to that first title shot that came in 2004, he was a very kind of widely unknown guy. He even lost 2 fights to the best known fighters on his resume to that point. In 2000, he lost the decision to Clifford Etienne, the Black Rhino, who was undefeated at the time. That was before Etienne fought Mike Tyson. And then he also lost to Charles Shuford in 2000, who went on to challenge for the vacant. Went on to challenge for the title against Vladimir Klitschko, I think in 2001, and he lost a decision to him too. And I'm telling you, I'm looking at his resume again right now, and the guy did nothing to become the number 2 contender. And in 2004, Corey Sanders was a reigning WBO champion heading into the year, or at the end of 03, after he had upset Vladimir Klitschko and to win the title in March of 2003. He was supposed to fight Lamon Brewster, who was the number 1 ranked contender, not even number 2. He was number 1 in the WBO, was Lamon Brewster, somehow, some way. Well, Sanders, a fight with Roy Jones Jr. fell through, and then he decided to go after the vacant WBC title against Vitaly Klitschko, a bigger fight, instead of fighting Lamon Brewster, who was a widely unknown fighter. So Brewster would fight Vladimir Klitschko, who was the WBO's number 2 contender, the former champ. Klitschko went in a heavy favorite into this fight and was dominating Brewster for the first 4 rounds of that fight. Then in the 5th round, Brewster came on as Vladimir looked exhausted for some reason. And Brewster came on and started landing big shots on him and ended up putting Klitschko down. Klitschko barely made it to his feet. When the bell rang for the end of the 5th round, he was exhausted and almost collapsed into the referee's arms. The referee would stop the fight, and Vladimir Klitschko would lose, and Lamon Brewster would score a major upset and become the WBO heavyweight champion. But nobody took Lamon Brewster really that serious, and his first defense would be against Australian Kali Meehan in September, who was a virtual nobody. And Brewster seemingly got outboxed and outworked in that fight and escaped with a less than deserving 12-round split decision. I don't think he won that fight against Meehan. It was close, but I don't think he won that fight. He escaped 2004, considered to be greatly the number 4 heavyweight at that time. Big time. And then what a difference a year would make. He would enter 2005. He was a Don King guy, and in May of that year, I believe, yes, May of that year, he would defend his title against Andrew Galata, the former, now 3-time world title challenger. I believe it was 3-time, but 2-time in the 2000s. He had earned a shot against Chris Bird and fought to a draw, and 03 or 04. It was 04. And then he fought John Ruiz after that draw and should have beat John Ruiz. He put John Ruiz down 3 times and somehow he lost the unanimous decision in a bullshit fight. So now they looked at this fight with Galata as a wash, as Brewster's the third of the 3 champions that Don King has, and Galata, a lot of people thought beat Bird and beat Ruiz especially. So going in against Lamon Brewster, nobody was giving Lamon Brewster a chance, and Lamon Brewster opened up. He ran over Andrew Galata, knocked him out in the first round of that fight to retain his WBO title in a shocking win. It really was, because everybody was finally going to give Andrew Galata, he was finally going to be a world champion and really achieve his true potential. And he knocked him off his fucking block. A great win for Lamon Brewster. That led to a mandatory title defense in September against Luan Krasniqi. And Krasniqi was outboxing Lamon Brewster for the majority of the fight. And then the relentless Lamon Brewster came alive in the 9th, and at the end of the 8th round, he landed a brutal shot that hurt Krasniqi badly. When Krasniqi came out for the 9th, he was still groggy, couldn't hold on, and Lamon Brewster stopped him. And at the end of 2005, most people felt Lamon Brewster was the #1 heavyweight in the world, myself included. He went from the 4th of the 4 champions to the top dog. He had passed up his Don King stablemates in Chris Bird and John Ruiz. And then Vitaly Klitschko had retired. And most people, as I said, considered Lamon Brewster the #1 heavyweight in the world. And I was one of them. So that was big. So then, with all that and everything, for him, he went into an optional defense against little-known White Wolf, Sergey Lyahovic. And, man, everything flipped on his head. He would get outworked in this fight. He fought hard, though. He really did fight hard against Lyahovic. Almost knocked him out. Lyahovic ended up taking a knee late in the fight because he was hurt. And that was a smart move, taking a knee so Brewster wouldn't knock him out. And then he got up, found his second win, and just beat Brewster to the punch. It was a good action-packed fight, one of the best heavyweight fights of the last 25 years, to be honest, especially title fights. But Lyahovic got a deserving decision and took the WBO title from Lamon Brewster in a major upset. He would not fight for 15 months, and then he received an opportunity at another world title shot when he would take on Vladimir Klitschko in a rematch from their 2004 bout. And Lamon Brewster didn't show up. What I mean is he was there, but he just could not pull the trigger, and Vladimir Klitschko dominated him with jabs and right hands, and but didn't want to get overdo himself. But after 6 rounds, Brewster's corner asked him if he wanted to continue, and he just shook his head, and the fight was stopped, and Vladimir Klitschko would win by a 6th-round TKO and retain the IBF title. And then that was the last world title fight for Lamon Brewster. He continued to fight on. He got 2 wins in a row, one over Michael Sprott, who was a decent contender, like English-British fighter. Back in the day, he was decent. And then after that, in 2009, he lost to some unknown guy by a decision. And then Robert Helenius, who's still boxing now, knocked him out, stopped him in the 8th round of their fight. And that was it. That was the career for Lamon Brewster. He never returned after that, never got back in serious mix. So for about 3 years there, Lamon Brewster was a serious heavyweight contender. That was the distance between his 6 title fights. But, as I said, at the end of 2005, most people considered him to be the #1 heavyweight in the world. He was a 6'2" fighter with a lot of power. And when he opened up, he was a hard guy to beat. He really was. But that's the thing. We just, it seemed like he had moments in the ring, and you see it on his resume. Losing to a guy like Etienne, who was there to be knocked out. Losing to Charles Shuford. That he just sometimes just could not be relentless and pull that trigger. And it was just like, what happened? And then he would have like the 5th round he had against Klitschko, and Klitschko ran out of gas, and he went off on him. Then, you had the other, times, like the Galata win. Oh my God, what a knockout that was. And that absolutely was his 2nd best win, but maybe his most single dominant win was that win over him. And then the 8th and 9th round against Krasniqi, when he finally got to Krasniqi, who was a decent boxer. He never went on to become a world champion, but he was a decent boxer. So it's just moments like that, and you're just like, wow, the guy maybe could have been something. But he really lucked out in the fight with Klitschko, in my opinion. But that was a major win. I mean, he was one of only four fighters to beat the #1 heavyweight in Vladimir Klitschko, and that's a lot of the reason why he's number 9. But that's a major win. It carries a big major win. He came in the underdog and pulled off the upset, and nobody could ever take that away from him. They really can't. And he became the world champion with that win. So, Lamon Brewster, I like the guy. He was explosive in moments, and I'm very interested to see how he does in this tournament. So that's my interactive fantasy heavyweight tournament rankings on my number 9 heavyweight in the tournament, the former WBO heavyweight champion of the world, Lamon Brewster. Hey, let's rewind for a minute. Part of the reason, one thing I want to start doing on these, part of the reason Brewster never unified belts was it was bad matchups during his title reign. Chris Bird, John Ruiz, we had seen some ugly heavyweight title fights at that time, and Don King didn't want to match his Brewster against those guys because it was just bad matchups, to be honest. I think that's why that didn't happen. And Brewster and Vitaly Klitschko would have been good, but Vitaly retired later on in 2004. He retired from the sport, and Hasim Rahman became champ. So it was just some bad matchups at the time for unifying belts. Back then, unifying titles after they split up for those couple years there, it really wasn't like a thing that Don King was worried about. He was just worried about stacking his cards with title fights and big names. So that was the goal. So anyways, that's the reasoning there. But again, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.